and they failed miserably. This movie is already a complete and total disaster, and it is so bad that now even the media has to admit that it is completely falling apart.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a new twist on a beloved Disney classic sparks more outrage than applause? The live-action remake of Snow White was meant to dazzle a fresh generation, yet it has ignited a firestorm of controversy that few people saw coming. At the center of it all stands Rachel Zgler, an actress who was once hailed as a rising star, only to find herself in the crosshairs of furious fans, exasperated studio executives, and a legal team demanding answers. How could a reimagined fairy tale spiral into such a high-stakes crisis? And why does this movie seem to be shaking the foundations of Disney's own kingdom? From political tweets to rumored sabotage, the tangled tale behind this troubled production reveals more than just a box office bomb. It may expose a deeper rift within the House of Mouse. And by the end, you'll be left wondering if Disney can ever recover the enchantment it once had. The real chaos erupted when Rachel Zgler took to social media with a post that was meant to promote the upcoming film, but also carried a politically charged message. In one breath, she was tweeting about being in the thick of rehearsals for another project, yet she ended her post with a sudden "Free Palestine" remark that caught everyone off guard. Her stance, while reflecting her personal views, landed like a bombshell in the middle of what should have been a carefully choreographed Disney press campaign. Disney executives, known for preferring a neat, family-friendly image, were said to be livid. While the company doesn't prohibit its stars from having personal opinions, mixing a promotional tweet for Snow White with a political statement posed a problem they hadn't anticipated. Almost overnight, Twitter threads exploded with debates over whether she had crossed a line, and fans began clashing in the replies, some applauding her courage, others accusing her of hijacking the film's spotlight with contentious world events. Yet Rachel wasn't alone in stirring up commentary. Her co-star, Gal Gadot, who portrayed the evil queen, had also ventured into political territory, openly expressing solidarity with Israel. The stark contrast between these two prominent voices, both from the same film, only magnified the tension. With the movie already under a microscope due to creative changes, viewers now found themselves caught in a swirling debate that combined a fairy tale adaptation with very real geopolitical strife. As if that weren't enough, disgruntled fans began digging deeper into past interviews, old tweets, and every snippet where Rachel might have shared an opinion that could be deemed controversial. The conversation snowballed into a nationwide backlash, punctuated by calls for Disney to step in and restore some semblance of order. The more heated the social media environment became, the more urgent it was for Disney to regain control of the narrative. But the damage was already done. Rumors began to swirl that some at Disney's highest levels were frustrated with their star's unfiltered candor. Had she violated certain clauses in her contract about preserving the Disney image? Was this an unfortunate misunderstanding, or did it point to a breakdown in communication between the actress and the studio? The drumbeat of public outrage kept getting louder. Now, it wasn't just about how she felt regarding the original story. It was about whether her activism and outspoken nature were overshadowing the fairy tale enchantment altogether. And if you thought this was enough to spark trouble, just wait, because back at Disney headquarters, an even bigger rift was forming among executives, revealing an internal chaos that would soon erupt into full view. Long before Snow White sparked daily headlines, Disney's leadership was divided over how far to push modern reinterpretations of classic tales. One faction believed the company needed to be fearless in updating older films to resonate with changing cultural attitudes. They argued that younger audiences crave stories where the heroine wasn't waiting around for a prince, and that a revised Snow White could highlight themes of empowerment and individuality. Another faction insisted Disney's magic came from preserving the heart and charm of its legendary catalog. They warned that radical updates risked alienating the loyal base that had grown up on these classics, especially families looking to revisit those cherished childhood memories. This group cautioned that too much modernization would rattle the emotional core that Disney's brand relies on. Inside meeting rooms, heated debates reportedly erupted on whether to keep the dwarfs, how to handle the romance element, and how drastically to reshape Snow White's personality. According to leaked documents, even fundamental questions like, should the prince exist at all, were on the table. While compromise seemed possible at first, perhaps by preserving the story's essence while gently updating certain themes, those early illusions vanished under mounting pressure to create something innovative. Then came the marketing discussions. High-ranking executives told the cast to emphasize a new perspective in interviews, one that would champion a forward-thinking and fierce lead. However, it appears some stars took these directives further than intended, publicly deriding certain elements of the 1937 classic. The marketing team, faced with test screenings that flagged potential issues, grew uneasy about the direction the publicity was taking. Confusion reigned. On the one hand, Disney wanted to promote the film as a bold, modern adaptation. On the other, it struggled to please traditional fans who felt protective of the original fairy tale's legacy. Such a powder keg needed only the smallest spark to ignite. Rachel's statements, once thought to be aligned with the progressive messaging, suddenly became ammunition for critics claiming Disney had lost its way. And while the actress made headlines, simmering discontent behind the curtain threatened to blow the entire operation wide open. That moment arrived sooner than anyone anticipated, and it would take the form of an emergency meeting that signaled Disney was ready to get lawyers involved. Word spread quickly that Rachel Zgler had been summoned to an impromptu meeting with Disney's legal team. According to insiders, this was no mere courtesy call. It was a high-stakes confrontation where corporate lawyers planned to address potential contract violations, reputational damage, and the looming specter of lawsuits. The actress arrived with her own counsel, fully expecting a tense showdown. At the heart of Disney's concerns was the question of whether Rachel's remarks had breached clauses that required the lead stars to protect Disney's brand. Her outspoken critiques of the original movie, combined with her mixing personal activism into promotional posts, could be interpreted as disparaging the studio's legacy. Company representatives hinted that negative press was directly impacting ticket sales and that the catastrophic box office returns, hovering well below projected numbers, were being pinned, at least in part, on her public persona. Rachel, however, wasn't ready to quietly accept that blame. Reports from her camp alleged that she was merely following studio directives to position the new Snow White as a more progressive spin on an old narrative. She insisted that phrases like dated and weird had been suggested during internal discussions to highlight how they were updating the fairy tale for the modern day. If that was true, then the actress had reason to feel blindsided by Disney's sudden shift in tone. Meanwhile, fans and pundits alike were left wondering if Disney was using Rachel as a scapegoat to distract from the deeper issues plaguing the project. Issues that likely stem from rush production decisions, inconsistent marketing messages, and creative clashes at the executive level. As talk of lawsuits swirled, a bigger question emerged. Was Disney genuinely looking to recoup financial losses from a star who failed to toe the company line, or was the studio orchestrating a grand show of force to remind all future talent where the power ultimately lies? Even more astonishing were whispers that co-star Gal Gadot might be the next in line for such a conversation. Though she hadn't been called in yet, her own public statements, especially regarding sensitive international issues, could similarly be seen as disruptive to the film's publicity campaign. For now, at least, Rachel Zgler appeared to be bearing the brunt of the scrutiny, but the story was still unfolding, and it was poised to get uglier. The producer's family would soon weigh in, and when they did, it painted an even more chaotic portrait of a film unraveling at breakneck speed. To understand why so many fans were disenchanted, it's essential to look at how the Snow White remake attempted to modernize the story. Gone, apparently, were the days of a simple, sweet princess in a cottage of whimsical dwarfs. According to leaks and early test screenings, the new narrative placed Snow White in a far more assertive role, removed traditional romantic elements, and dramatically shrank the presence or existence of the original dwarfs. Critics argued that it stripped away the enchanting innocence that made the 1937 film a touchstone of animated cinema. This overhaul might have been defensible if it blended seamlessly with the spirit of the original. But glimpses of the storyline suggested something else entirely. A forced injection of messaging that felt jarringly disconnected from what made Snow White beloved in the first place. It was as though Disney couldn't decide if it wanted an entirely new heroine or just enough changes to attract modern audiences, leading to a mishmash that satisfied almost no one. A clear schism formed. On one side were viewers hungry for fresh interpretations, excited by the possibility of a princess not defined by romance. On the other side stood purists who wanted the timeless, dreamy quality of the classic preserved. Both camps, however, found themselves disappointed. The final product seemed neither a bold reimagining nor a faithful tribute. And while Rachel Zgler's performance might have been overshadowed by her off-screen comments, insiders admitted that the script itself suffered from indecision, leaving the actress in a tough spot. Champion a progressive spin and risk angering traditionalists, or remain silent and risk alienating the new audience? Could there be more to the story than clashing creative visions and a headstrong actress? Some insiders swear there was an undercurrent of sabotage at the executive level, suggesting that certain higher-ups disliked the direction of the film so much that they allowed it to fail. According to rumors, these executives feared the oversaturation of live-action remakes was cheapening Disney's once untouchable brand, and they saw Snow White as a prime example of what not to do. Rachel Zgler herself seemed to fuel these theories by insisting she'd been encouraged, if not directed, to emphasize how the film diverged from the original. She argued that she was simply echoing the marketing blueprint Disney had laid out, only to be hung out to dry when the public lashed back. If that's the case, then Disney's sudden shift to distance itself from her comments could indicate a scramble to protect its broader interests, even at the expense of its lead star. At the center of this storm is a young actress who believed she was championing a fresh take, only to watch the studio seemingly backtrack at the first sign of trouble. The brand fallout continues to this day, with industry watchers speculating whether Rachel Zgler's career could be permanently stained by the project's disastrous reception, and if Disney might face even greater repercussions for letting such a high-profile production unravel in full public view. Now, all eyes are on whether Disney and Zgler can reach an accord that salvages both parties' reputations, or if a protracted dispute will inflict further damage. But one point is clear: the stakes go far beyond a single underperforming film. Disney's golden legacy is on the line, and the path to regaining its luster may be more complicated than ever. When Disney first announced a live-action Snow White remake, nobody expected it to become a lightning rod for controversy, internal strife, and finger-pointing. What began as a seemingly straightforward reboot ballooned into a cautionary saga of creative disarray, social media missteps, and corporate maneuvering. Rachel Zgler's raw, unfiltered approach gave fans an unsettling glimpse of the tensions hidden behind the carefully curated Disney facade. The very fact that an emergency meeting, complete with legal teams, took place underscores how grave the situation truly became. In the end, Snow White was supposed to symbolize fresh magic for a new generation. Instead, it revealed the precarious nature of modern remakes, where decades of brand loyalty and billions in financial stakes can unravel in the span of a few incendiary interviews. Perhaps the real lesson lies in how the push to modernize a beloved fairy tale can backfire if it's forced, confusing, or handled without genuine respect for what made the original endure. Now, fans, critics, and industry insiders are left to wonder: will Disney learn from this bruising experience, or is it destined to repeat its mistakes with future remakes? Are we witnessing a temporary stumble on Disney's path of reinvention, or the start of a larger identity crisis for the studio that taught the world to dream? Most importantly, does this fiasco signal a tipping point where audiences reject hollow attempts at relevance in favor of authenticity and heartfelt storytelling? No one can say for sure, but one thing is certain: the Snow White controversy has changed the conversation around how Hollywood tackles cherished classics. For better or worse, people have seen the consequences of straying too far from what fans hold dear. Only time will tell if this moment sparks a permanent course correction within Disney's fairy tale kingdom, or if the next big budget remake will simply follow the same path, hoping the public forgets. As viewers, all we can do is watch the drama unfold, reflect on the risks of reworking timeless stories, and remember that sometimes, even the most powerful entertainment empire can lose sight of its magic in the quest for a modern edge.